Hey, you awesome folks! Thanks for taking this journey of discovery with your guide, Keith Haney. You're listening to the Becoming Bridge Builders podcast, your favorite podcast for everything from racial reconciliation to education innovation, justice reform, and leading change in the 21st century. This podcast is for people who love to be challenged with difficult topics, but want practical solutions to solve these challenging issues. Becoming Bridge Builders makes change possible. Each week on the podcast, Keith invites innovative thought leaders to share how they are building bridges in their area of expertise. You will hear breakthrough ideas and concepts that are changing the world. He's featuring guests who are best-selling authors, leaders at Microsoft, entrepreneurs, leading educators, professors, lawyers, and so many more. Listen in to learn how you can be the bridge to the change you are seeking.
Guest today, Kevin Palmieri, is the CFO, founder, and co-host of Next Level University, a global top 100 self-improvement podcast with more than 1,500 episodes and 800,000 listeners in over 125 countries. Some people find rock bottom. He found that rock bottom had a basement. In his mid-20s, he had it all. He had a beautiful girlfriend, high-paying job, sports car, dream body, but ended up sitting on the edge of a bed debating suicide. After this rock bottom moment, Kevin went all in on a holistic self-improvement. He was determined to overcome his anxiety, depression, and to finally live life he'd always dreamed of. Years later, he hosted a podcast that impacted hundreds of thousands of people in countries all over the world. At this stage, Kevin helped grow the podcast into a multi-six-figure business, and he recorded over 1,500 episodes. He's given hundreds of speeches, trainings, and coaching calls with people all over the world. The main thing he changed, he said, was himself. He focused on learning what he didn't know, and his life started to shift. He loved talking about consistency, commitment, habits, mindset, confidence, fear, relationships, limiting beliefs, and everything in between. Kevin has a heart driven to a no-nonsense approach to holistic self-improvement. He looks forward to teaching more people about what he really takes him to the next level. Welcome, Kevin, to the podcast. We welcome Kevin to the podcast. How you doing today, Kevin?
I am doing very well, Keith. I appreciate you having me. I'm excited to chat and see where we go with our conversation today.
I am too. So we're going to dive in with my favorite question to ask all my guests. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice I've ever received is from my business partner, and I got it very early on in the journey. He said, "Big things start small, Kev." And he then went into what I'm sure was an epic monologue about how really, if you want to be successful, you have to find a snowball and you have to roll that snowball down the hill for as long as humanly possible. I believe Warren Buffett had a very similar quote. And that was really important for me because I was somebody who had a very hard time looking into the future and understanding how small actions add up over time. So when he said big things start small, I think that gave me a lot of perspective around success, life, love, health, wealth. All of that is a long game. And if you do the small things every day, they add up to big things eventually.
That's so good. That's actually the same thing too as my profession too, as in the church work, is that, we have these small moments where we want to get to the end of our journey where we're these mature Christians, but that's a long journey. And so every day is a little bit of just doing the little work of just growing individually every day by studying God's word and seeing where it takes us. So I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. Success is not built overnight. It's built every night, right? Everything is. It's just if you do it long enough, right?
Exactly. I kind of want to give you an opportunity to as an entrepreneur, what's the most powerful piece of advice you would have for early entrepreneurs?
Man, I would probably say be wildly honest with yourself about what you're really good at and be wildly honest with yourself about what you're really terrible at and work as diligently as you can to double and triple down on the amount of time you're doing the stuff that you're really good at and work very, very hard and very, very focused on delegating the stuff that you're not really, because there are certain things that only you can do in your business. So one of the first things we ever delegated was audio and video editing, because nobody can jump on the mic and just replace what we're doing. But there are people behind the scenes who can help us, and that's what they do, and that's what they're really good at. So that's what I would say. I think there's a lot of people out there that unfortunately don't give themselves credit for what they're really good at, and they have a little delusion around what they're really bad at. And that's a recipe for long-term disaster, unfortunately.
There in the business world, there's been this premise for a long time as focus on your weaknesses and improve those. And if you improve those, the entire level of the barrel goes up as you work on your weaknesses. So, yeah.
It's challenging too, right? Because our entire brand is health, wealth, and love. So I'm talking well-rounded. But the thing about it is, when you get really, really good at that one thing, that 20% is probably going to bring you 80% of the results anyway. When you get that 80% of the results, you can then pour into the weaknesses. It depends on the business. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on how you're growing the business. It depends on a lot of things. But I think that if you go all in on one thing and you get really good at one thing, eventually you'll have the resources to shore up any weaknesses you have. And it might happen quicker. But I do understand it can be a dangerous game.
Yeah, no. And the new philosophy is focus on your strengths. So kind of what you're talking about is, with the whole Strength Finder, Gallup part of focus all your attention on the things you're good at, like you just said, and not worry about as much the things you're not good at. So there's always two schools of thought to that.
Yeah. And it depends on how you work too.
Right.
Right. If you're somebody who, if a lot of people I've worked with are afraid of success, they have a fear of success. So they are unintentionally not doubling and tripling down on their strengths because they're afraid that their strengths are going to bring them results that they're not ready for yet. So there's a lot of intricacies when it comes to it. You really have to just get to the level of self-awareness to figure out what it's going to be for you. I've really worked diligently on all things, but I wonder if it has taken longer to get to where we are, where if I just said, I'm going to be a speaker, a podcaster, and a coach, if I did that earlier, I'm very curious to see what would have happened.
Yeah, it's very true. I'm always curious, Kevin, as you talk about what we're talking about, like just success and things in life, there are always those people that came alongside us in our journey who helped inspire us. Who were some people in your life that you can give a shout out to now that served to inspire you in this journey?
Yeah, one is Alan. Alan is my business partner. I've worked every single day with him for the last coming up on 7 years almost. So we have a very good relationship. We're brothers, we're family, but we're business partners. We're not really brothers, but we treat each other that way. So he's been very instrumental in my growth. He's been mentoring me since day one. I have another really good friend, my other best friend. His name is Matt. He is someone who has really big goals and really big dreams, and just seeing him grind away at them day in and day out is always very inspirational to me. And then I would say my wife. My wife is a big inspiration and someone who has helped me in this journey, because she has asked me questions that not a lot of other people would be willing to ask me. And since we have such a close relationship, I took those questions very seriously. So I would say I'm very blessed to have an amazing circle. It's very small, but I'm very blessed to have the people I do. And I would not be here in the way I am without those people, because I am very far from self-made. I am definitely self-focused and others made. The recipe, the ingredients are all over the place. So I would not be me without them.
That's great. Love that. So I read a little bit of your bio, and I'd love for you to share with us your personal story.
Yeah. So for me, I don't think that anybody would have predicted that we would be where we are today, especially based on my past. So I was raised in a single parent household. I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. So technically I had two moms, if you want to look at it that way. And we were definitely lower middle class. We didn't have a ton of money. We had conversations about how we were going to pay rent on more than one occasion. So that was fairly common. In high school, that's when things really started to kind of shift for me, because I knew I didn't want to go to college, but I had no idea what I really wanted to do. So in high school, I was training to fight professionally, mixed martial arts. That was one of my goals. So after I graduated high school, I had a job pumping gas at the local gas station, and I was training mixed martial arts at night. And then I ended up getting a job cleaning hospital floors and bathrooms. And I was a truck driver, a forklift operator, personal trainer in construction. I did many, many, many different things. I did tiling for a while. And eventually, Keith, I got a job in an industry called weatherization when I was in my early 20s. And I went from making $15 an hour at my previous job to the first job I ever worked with them, I was making $50 an hour.
Wow.
And that 50 went up to 60. And then depending on where I was working in the country, I'd be getting up to $120 an hour. So when I got that job, I was convinced that was going to be the thing that I did forever. So if you fast forward to when I was 25, if you looked at me from the outside looking in, you would see a young man who had a new sports car. I had the body of my dreams because I had just won a bodybuilding show. My girlfriend was a model, high-paying job, new apartment. From the outside looking in, I had everything you could ever want. But internally, I was very unfulfilled. Internally, I was very uncertain. I was insecure. My mental health was in a rough patch. And I just wasn't the person that you probably would have thought I was. My girlfriend ended up leaving me because she had these really big goals and these really big aspirations. And I was unconsciously holding her back because I was afraid of being left behind. And go figure, that is what happened. When she left, my bills doubled, work got really slow. So that was an initial rock bottom moment for me, trying to figure out, where do I go from here? I fell into the trap that I think many of us fall into. And I said, I need more money. If I make the most money I've ever made in my entire life, I will be the most happy and fulfilled I have ever been in my entire life. So the next year, I said, I'm going to make as much money as humanly possible. And I proceeded to spend the next 10 months living on the road in different hotels up and down the East Coast of the US, because a lot of our jobs were in other states and other counties and all over the place. So we get to the end of the year. I had my final pay stub in hand, and my goal was to make $100,000 at 26. That was my goal with no college degree. And I ended up doing that. But when I opened my final pay stub, I had a very drastic realization that for most of my life, especially that year, I had lived unconsciously. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So I ended up starting a podcast in 2017 called the Hyper Conscious Podcast. I fell in love with podcasting as I fell out of love with my job, because I've reached the pinnacle of what I wanted to, and it didn't make me feel the way I expected. I was in it for money and I was in it for significance. And when it didn't fix the things I thought it would, I realized that wasn't the job I really wanted to do. So I started calling out of work, leaving the job site early, showing up late, all of that stuff. I was not a good employee, Keith. And eventually it got to the point where I was just getting so homesick. I was depressed. I was anxious. I woke up in a hotel room in New Jersey, which was 6 hours away from where I lived at the time. My alarm clock went off at 5:15. I sat up, I slid to the edge of the bed, and I was lacing up my work boots, as I had done 1,000 times prior to that day. In that morning, it was like there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station. And one was saying, you're stuck here forever. People like you don't get jobs like this. Never mind, leave them behind. If you ever did work up the courage to leave, what would your friends think? What would your family think? And what are you going to do with your life? You never really had a plan A. This is kind of your plan A now. There is no plan B. What are you going to do? And it was in that moment where I thought to myself, if I just take my life, I will take my problems with me. And I was just dealing with all this inner dialogue and negative thoughts, negative feelings, negative emotions. I reached out to my friend, who is now my business partner, Alan, and I explained to him what was going on. And he said, Kev, over the last few years, your awareness has changed a ton, but your environments have remained the same. I think it's time for you to change your environment. So in 2018, I left my job and I went full-time into podcasting. And I've been a full-time podcaster, entrepreneur, coach, whatever you want to call me, for the last coming up on 6 years now.
Interesting story. So as you think about how you got to that point and how you shifted, What were some, besides your best friend coming in and speaking truth in your life, what else changed in your life to get to that point where you were able to get better mental health?
I tried to start investing in myself. And when I say investing in myself, I'm not suggesting from a financial place. I had a very low level of self-worth, and I wasn't investing time, energy, and effort into getting better as a human. I always liken it to, you're most likely not going to put an expensive paint job on a car that has 4 flat tires. I felt like I had 4 flat tires and I wasn't worth working on. So I started getting into self-improvement. I started reading books. I started tracking habits. I started having deep conversations. I started trying to unlayer or unravel the layers of my ego. I really worked a lot on self-awareness. So I would ask myself, why? Why do I feel confident around this person? Why do I feel confident in this situation? Why do I lack confidence in this situation? Why am I afraid of that judgment? Why am I not afraid of that judgment? And I really went on this quest to try to know myself at the deepest level. Even the name of the podcast, hyperconscious. If you look in the dictionary, hyperconscious means acutely aware. I wanted to be acutely aware of myself and my surroundings and my inner dialogue. So I went on a somewhat obsessive quest to figure out, who was Kevin? Who did Kevin think he was? How was I showing up in the world? What are my limiting beliefs? What are my empowering beliefs? I really went to work on the inner dialogue, my inner self, and I tried to do the right things externally as well. So tracking habits, learning every day, going to events, that type of thing. That was really, really important for me. And the other thing is, and I'm very blessed to have this opportunity, I have a podcast about self-improvement. So I had a lot of necessity to learn and grow and understand things at a deeper level, because I don't want to be someone who is teaching something they're not practicing. I don't want to talk about something that I'm not experiencing in my life. So those were a lot of the big things. And again, I had very positive people around me, which was beneficial, but I really was working on myself, because I realized I worked on my body for a long time and I was in really good shape. Cool. I worked on my bank account for a long time and eventually that was in really good shape too. Cool. I never really worked on Kevin. And now I'm sure you've heard the quote, the level of your success most likely will not be higher than the level of your self-improvement. I didn't understand that at the time, especially if we're talking about holistic success. So that really was what it was for me, Keith.
So tell us about the Hyper Consciousness podcast. When people tune in, what are they going to hear? What are they going to learn from you as you've gone on this journey?
In the beginning, so when we started the podcast, or when I started the podcast as the Hyper Conscious podcast, we were just having deep talks, deep thoughts. It was all over the place. When we were 500-ish episodes in, we rebranded to Next Level University, and we are Next Level University today. So everything we talk about is self-improvement. We talk about how to improve your relationship, not just with your partner, with your family, but how do we improve your relationship with your wallet? How do we improve your relationship with your bank account, with your body, with your past, with your future, with your present? So we talk a lot about that. We talk about how to make more money. We talk about how to understand yourself at a deeper level. It really, when I say holistic self-improvement, I just mean well-rounded. I just mean 3-dimensional. Life, love, health, and wealth. That's really what we're focused on. So yeah, you might hear an episode on 3 ways to make more money. You also might hear an episode on the number 1 habit to be tracking right now, how to start the year as strong as humanly possible, 3 ways to build confidence. So we're all over the place, but it's really focused on how do we help you get 1% better today, so you can come back tomorrow and get a little bit better and then rinse and repeat. And that's the big reason we do an episode every single day. If I'm going to talk about helping you get a little bit better and me getting better myself every day, the least I can do is be in your pocket every day.
I got a chance to hear the author of Atomic Habits, and that's a big part of his book, which has gone viral, bestseller. The 1% is one he focuses on so much in the book. I want to drill down on something. You talk about next level in our own development. I think a key word there has to be vulnerability. You can't go next level if you're not honest about yourself, about your situation. So why is vulnerability so key to this next level that you're talking about?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
And now a word from one of our sponsors, For Freedom Mobile. If you're using AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, then you're being tracked. Mobile providers collect your location, communications, internet activity, even your financial transaction. They sell that data to anyone willing to pay for it and provide it to the government without a warrant. Switch to For Freedom Mobile, and you won't ever have to worry about big tech or big brother tracking you through your mobile phone again. For Freedom Mobile provides secure, unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data for just $29.99 a month, and it includes free internet roaming in over 200 countries. Sign up for the service by visiting forfreedommobile.com and using the promo code BRIDGEBUILDERS to get your first month for only $9.99. See forfreedommobile.com for details, just like the number 4, freedommobile.com.
You just said the word. Vulnerability is truth. Vulnerability is honesty. A lot of people, when they hear the word vulnerability, they think vulnerably sharing with someone else. It's very hard to vulnerably share something with someone else until you have vulnerably shared it with yourself first. So vulnerability is important when it comes to growth, self-improvement, self-awareness, because you're admitting where you currently are. It's vulnerable to say, I really feel like I was in better shape 2 years ago. It's really vulnerable to say, wow, I have not put nearly as much time, energy, and effort into my relationship as I have in the past. That is a very, very challenging thing to experience, to deal with, to come to the realization of. Vulnerability helps us work around the ego that is trying to protect us. Ego is not a bad thing. It serves a purpose, and it's job to protect us from things we're not ready to hear yet. But vulnerability is us getting ready to share things that we are ready to share with ourselves. So the simplest answer is, I believe vulnerability is truth. It's real. It's what's real. And if you want to grow, if you want to get to the next level, you have to be vulnerable to figure out what the level you're on actually is. And one of my favorite thoughts around vulnerability, especially with relationships, is the level of your relationship is directly connected to the level of vulnerability in it. If you're not vulnerable with the people around you, they don't know the real you, and vice versa. If someone doesn't know the truth, it's very hard to connect at that real deep level. So that's another essential piece to relationships, and maybe a little bit of necessity to help us become a little bit more vulnerable. Because if you want real, soul-filling, amazing relationships, one of the ways to do it is make them vulnerable. Now, obviously be careful with who you're vulnerable with, because maybe you don't have those people in your life yet, or you haven't experienced it. But I think that's a really important place to put your time. How do I find people who I feel safe being vulnerable with so I can live in the truth? They can live in the truth with me, and we can further that relationship.
That's great. Another piece of what you talk about, I want to kind of ask you this as a coach. So I'm coming to you and I got the vulnerable part of my life in order, but I struggle with that 1%. I struggle with consistency. What tips do you have as a coach to help me be more consistent in my journey?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is we need to help you build accountability and necessity. So one of the easiest ways to build consistency is to have someone do it with you. So if somebody comes to me and says, yeah, I want to work out consistently, but every time the alarm clock goes off at 5:30, or every time I get off work at 5 o'clock, I don't want to do it. I would say, okay, who do you know local to you that also exercises near you? Let's send them a message and let's set up the fact that you're going to do the buddy system and you're going to work out together. We are usually willing to do far more for other people than we are ourselves. So that's layer one. Another thing we really like to do that works really well is we will say to someone, okay, we're going to do a commitment device. So your goal is what? I want to go to the gym 3 times a week for the next month. All right, awesome. We've determined that that's realistic. We've determined that you're capable of actually doing that, and that would really benefit you. Cool. I want you to tell me, what is your favorite or least favorite charity? And they'll say, okay, I'm anti-cigarettes. Okay, cool. Let's write up an agreement right now that says if you do not go to the gym 3 times a week for the next 4 weeks, you're going to donate $100 to a charity that you are against or a business that you are against. Another thing we've done, and I do this with myself, is somebody will pay for multiple coaching calls. So let's just say I charge $150 an hour and they do a call. We'll charge them for 2 calls. We'll charge them for $300. And they'll say, I will not get that $150 back unless I do what we agreed to do on today's coaching call. A lot of us are motivated by money, and we're more motivated by the thought of losing something than we are the thought of gaining something. So we will use that. We do that very often. And I did that with myself when I was lacking in the fitness arena. I gave my wife a $100 bill. And I said, hey, if I do not go to the gym 7 times this week, I need you to rip this up in front of me. And as you can imagine, Keith, she did not want to take any part in that. But I said, it's already done in my mind. I just needed to have an extra layer of commitment. So those are 2 really, really, I won't say simple, but those are really effective ways. And then I would say the third one is ask yourself, what is your community doing for your consistency? So do you have the type of community that says, well, don't worry about it, let's just stay up late tonight and you can just skip the gym? Or do you have the type of community that says, hey, I know you want to go to the gym first thing in the morning. I picked an hour-and-a-half movie so we can get to bed at 9, and I actually am going to go to the gym with you, right? The community, with the right community, hard things are easier. With the wrong community, easy things are harder. And I would say that's a big piece too when it comes to consistency.
I love it. So I'm curious, as a podcaster, I haven't reached your level of episodes yet, but I've learned a lot over the first 200 episodes. I'm curious, what's the biggest thing you've learned when you passed 1,000 episodes?
Yeah, I learned that from day to day, progress is invisible. From year to year, progress is impossible to miss. There isn't a drastic difference between episode 999 and episode 1000, but there is a drastic difference between episode 1000 and episode 500 and then episode 100. I think we lose sight of how much micro progress we're making on the day to day. And sometimes it requires a level of specific perspective to actually see that. So it's almost like, if you, as a full-grown adult, have ever gone to a playground that you used to play at as a child, everything looks really, really, really small. But if you just imagine it, you can't really tell. You have to go back and put your new self in an old environment to get the contrast of perspective. That's what crossing 1,000 episodes did for me, for sure. And then when it comes to a lesson that I learned from many of the guests we have, your adversity can become your advantage eventually if you know how to use it. We have had guests on that have had very, very challenging, traumatic things happen to them. And in the beginning, I thought, oh, wow, that's an interesting story. I'll probably never hear anything like that again. And then I did. And then I heard more and more and more and more. And eventually we connected the dots that, look, most of the amazing people we had the opportunity to interview have gone through a lot of stuff, but they didn't allow that stuff to stop them from being the person that they wanted, or it quite literally was the trauma or the tragedy that started them out on this new journey of becoming the type of person that they needed when they were going through that. So the lesson there for me, and hopefully for the audience as well, was your adversity can be your advantage if you know how to leverage it right, and if you're okay with revisiting it to understand the lessons and the takeaways. That was a really big one, because at that point we had interviewed hundreds of people. So we started to see that pattern. And if you listen to my story, my adversity now is my advantage. Alan has his own story. Keith, I'm sure you have your story as well. I think that's a very common thing that podcasts and YouTube videos and TED Talks and stuff have really helped us see.
Yeah, I almost thought about going back and making all the first year episodes under a paywall so nobody would actually listen to them. But
I understand, my friend. I very much understand.
Because no one's going to pay for that.
Yeah. Who knows? You never know. They might say, well, there's a reason these things I got to pay. There must be some goodness and or a lot of embarrassment.
That's right. There must be some gold under those hills. I'm curious, Kevin, what are you excited about in this season of your life?
Wow. We have a lot of business momentum right now, and some days I have to pinch myself, honestly. I'm very excited about it because it doesn't seem real to have the level of business we do. We have an 18-person team, and there's just so much going on behind the scenes. That's very exciting to me, but it is also equally as overwhelming. The other thing I'm very excited about is I feel like we're getting another level of clarity around the business and the brand and the intention behind everything that we do. It's easy to lose sight when you're doing so many things, right? Whether you're watching this or listening to this, sometimes you fall off focus because you're focused on so many things. So just rehoning the vision, making sure we are always doing this for the reason we started, and just staying with the core belief of why we're doing this. I'm very excited to just continue honing that, refocusing, and continuing to get a new level of clarity.
I love it. I love to ask my guests this question as we kind of wrap things up. What would you want your legacy to be?
That is a question that I've gotten many times, and I've always laughed before I answer because I was never, ever, ever thinking about that. That is something that was never, ever, ever on my radar. And the first time I got asked that question, I sat with it for a second, and my answer remains the same. The legacy I am focused on is more what Keith thinks of me after I leave than almost anything else, because I don't know if I'm ever going to see you again, Keith. This is the first time you and I have ever spoken. This is most likely the first time you've ever heard of me, whether you're watching or listening, and it might be the last time you ever hear from me. So my goal is to treat every single interaction I have as the last interaction I might have with that person. They may never see me again. A lot of us are thinking of legacy, what happens after I die. I am kind of dead to you if you never talk to me again. So I might only get one opportunity to make a point land or make you laugh or make you feel good or make you feel heard. So my goal when it comes to legacy is to treat every interaction I have as it's the last interaction I'm going to have with that person, and imagine that I'm never going to get another opportunity to influence that person, to listen to that person, whatever it may be. That's what legacy means to me now more than ever.
It's funny you said that. That was how I always preach every sermon I gave. You may leave this church and get hit by a car on the way home. I want to make sure that you left with something that was meaningful. So I appreciate that.
Likewise, my friend, likewise. I'm glad we share that. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
Oh, my goodness. No, I feel like you had a really good, we were all over the place with questions, but it all came back to the same place. So no, I would say you did a wonderful job, and I think you had great questions.
Well, thank you. Where can listeners find your podcast and connect with you on social media?
Just search Next Level University. We are on all the podcast platforms. All of our episodes are on YouTube as well. And then the best place to reach out to me would be on Instagram. My handle is @NeverQuitKid. And then on Facebook, you can just search Kevin Palmieri, and there we'll be friends in no time.
Well, Kevin, thanks so much for adding great content to the listeners and to my podcast, and blessings on the work you're doing to help people get to that next level in their life.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate you. I appreciate the wonderful questions, the energy, and the conversation.
Thanks for listening to Becoming Bridge Builder. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the podcast, please subscribe and share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram @bkeithhaney and on Getter and Twitter @RevHeadpin or on his website at alightbreaksthrough.org. Thanks again, and tune in next time.
Do you know that most entrepreneurs hit a revenue ceiling and have no idea why? They're working harder, spending more money, running more ads, but revenue stays flat. My friend Dr. Noah St. John calls this the invisible break. He's giving our listeners a free revenue ceiling audit to help you see what's really holding you back. You'll get a free 30-day membership to NoahBot, giving you access to Dr. Noah's 30 years of experience to help you reach your next level. But hurry, because there's only 50 available this month. So if you're tired of being stuck at the same revenue level and want to finally break through, get your free revenue ceiling audit at drnoahvault.com in the affiliate link that'll be listed in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to Becoming Bridge Builder. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the podcast, please subscribe and share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at @bkeithhaney and on Getter and Twitter @RevHeadpin. Thanks again, and tune in next time.